Welcome to Film at 50, a podcast that celebrates semi-centennials in the world of cinema. I'm your host, Brian Rowe. I'm very excited to welcome Brandon Siri back to the podcast today to talk about
Hey, thanks, Brian.
Welcome, Brandon. Today we're talking about the sketch comedy film, and now for something completely different. The first of, four major Monty Python films. This one was shot in 1970, came out in the UK in 71, did not make it to the United States until August of 72. So that's why we're talking about it now, Brandon.
Makes sense.
But technically, this is kind of like, I haven't really looked back on the films of 1971 in many, many months now. This is, I guess, technically kind of like one last episode about a movie that came out in 71, because really it was done and released a year before it came to the United States, which is kind of a rarity in all the films we're looking at for the podcast.
I did not realize that. If I'm wrong, correct me, but these are recreated sketches from their show.
So weird.
Circus, correct?
Yeah.
They redid them again.
So, yeah. So in the UK, they do this television series with an audience, and most, if not all, of the sketches just come straight from that show, the first two seasons, and then they reshot them a little bit more cinematically with no audience. And they're, from what I read, like they kind of made this to gain more attention in the United States because their series in the UK was not really getting here, and they wanted to produce a product that could actually get more viewers, stateside.
I mean, that makes sense. I mean, yeah.
But it was weird in that they would just recreate the same stuff they'd already done.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming they must have made, so when you watch the film, they cut to them, John Cleese keeps saying, oh, and now for something completely different.
Yes.
I'm assuming that was like the new material, that and probably, what is it, like 20% cartoon, which also, it's easily the worst part of it is the Monty Python cartoons that just interrupt you randomly.
I would disagree.
Really?
Yeah, as we'll get into, I did not laugh very much in this movie, to the point where I actually started to welcome the animation segments because I thought there was at least kind of something interesting there that I wasn't finding so much in the sketches themselves.
The ones I liked were the ones I recognized. So like,
oh, you had seen some of these sketches before?
Like the lumberjack one is pretty famous, right? The song. So when that one came out, I'm like, oh, I know this one. I've heard that one. I remember that from growing up. Like, oh, this is where it's from. I see now. I think that might have been the only recognizable one, actually, that I've already seen.
So you thought of the animation as kind of padding, like they came in at 65 minutes and they went, well, that's not long enough. We need to add something.
I mean, it's definitely the style. You look at all the Monty Python, and they always had those little cartoon, intro outros with the trumpet sounds and stuff. Yeah. So, it was their style and their theme, but it does feel like padding because there's a lot of it in this short movie, and it doesn't go anywhere either. It's not really even tied in with the live footage.
Yeah, it's kind of a difficult movie to talk about because, like, I've talked about anthology horror films on the podcast. Usually those are like between 3 and 5 stories, lasting anywhere between 15 to 25 minutes. This movie, what does it say on Wikipedia? It's like 45 segments in an 85-minute running time.
Yeah.
We're talking like every segment. I mean, what's the longest segment in this whole movie? 5 minutes, maybe? That's the longest one.
Tops. They might even be shorter than that. Yeah, 5 minutes.
So I try for this podcast, whenever I put on a movie I haven't seen before, I try not to read up on it too much until after I've watched it. But I did just glance at the Wikipedia page right before I started it. And I saw the sketches and it just went on forever. And I went, well, this is either going to be great or this is going to be just a kind of a slog, because it's like, how do you really, you can't really tell a story with all of those segments. I thought there might be at least a wraparound or like some kind of through line story. There's nothing. It's really just a series of unrelated sketches, pretty much, right?
Yeah. I've been thought, remember the beginning? So when you watch it, it opens up with there are people hiding and they keep standing up and then they get shot. Like you can't see the narrator.
That's the funniest thing in the whole movie.
The narrator's killing people. I'm like, well, this is going to come back. This will be a running gag throughout multiple sketches where people just keep getting randomly shot by the narrator.
Yeah, and blown up.
Or blown up, and it never happens. And you're just like,
yeah, I was thinking at least at the end we could have a throwback to the opening joke and maybe like have our main actors in a situation where they start blowing up and we like as we go to credits, like maybe something that ties back to the opening joke. And we don't even get that. It's like just more animation.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Monty Python and the Holy Grail from 75, I believe is the year that came out, is a great comedy. And it tells a story, like from beginning to end, like one story. It's not a series of sketches, right?
Right. No, it's one story. They got to get to the Holy Grail. And like it's the same, the same actors play multiple characters.
Right.
But it is one story. This one is just shorts. It's just a bunch of shorts all strung together. Clearly, and now it makes more sense what you were saying, as a way for Monty Python to break into the United States and get a market where, we'll go, if we have something in theaters, then we're going to get a new audience. And, I guess maybe that its greatest contribution is it must have worked.
Yeah, maybe they wanted to make a movie like Holy Grail in 70 to 72, but they maybe didn't have the funds for it. And they needed to produce something that just introduced them to a new audience. And then it looks like from my research and now for something completely different, it didn't do that great in the United States, but it did start to catch on after a while on the midnight circuit. And it started playing on like PBS. It started playing in people's homes. And they started to become more aware of these guys and their comedy. And then Holy Grail is not until 75. So I'm wondering if it caught on to the point where they could really make a cinematic movie that they weren't able to do before.
Yeah.
Which would be I mean, I don't know exactly their trajectory there, but this seems like a stepping stone to something better. And now for something completely different.
I didn't hate the whole thing, really. I mean, it was okay. It's a very specific sense of humor, and these were some of their driest sketches. I mean, I would say half the sketches involve death. There's one where they're sitting there and there's just people jumping off the roof of a building and they're flying by their window.
That's the other best, funniest segment in the whole thing.
And it's just like the one guy can't believe it, and then they start betting on people jumping off the roof. And it's dry, dark humor, and for the time, that was pretty risque. And so for that, I mean, there was some kind of funny, groundbreaking stuff. Because
especially for this time, like in terms of the comedies that are coming out in 71, 72, you don't get a whole lot of that black style humor. So that was kind of that's something that's kind of innovative for its time too. Before we get into more about the movie, just like kind of what are some of your favorite comedies, Brandon? Like if you had to pick like your favorite 3 to 5, like what come to mind? Like what's like a comedy, new or old, that you love?
It's hard.
There's a lot to choose from.
Well, comedy right now is like dominated by television, in my opinion.
Right.
There's not a lot of great films because I don't know why. I don't think the audience disappeared. I just think it moved out. I mean, remember back when like Meet the Parents came out? Like that was a great
2000
generation of comedy. I mean, you'd have, or there'd be raunchy teen comedies when we were in high school.
When we were in high school, it was constant. Every 3 to 4 months, we'd have a raunchy teen comedy. And then they kind of made too many of them straight to VHS and DVD. And then they became like, they stopped doing that. And so, man, like in the 90s,
the
90s was such a great time for comedies, especially considering how young we were. We were, in the mid to late 90s, we were like getting into middle school and high school, and so many great like R-rated comedies that were really funny. And not all of them were franchise films. Sometimes it'd just be a one-off and it would just be great. And, you like, get the DVD and call it a day.
So I have younger kids, but I made them watch Dumb and Dumber with me. And,
your kids watch Dumb and Dumber.
My oldest loved it. It's funny. The whole film is funny end to end. And, there's nothing, it's a very simple plot, but it's got great jokes.
Yeah.
Consistent, silly acting. They just don't make them like that quality anymore.
Dumb and Dumber is definitely in my top 5 favorite comedies ever. It's probably my favorite Jim Carrey comedy. I mean, there's nothing like it. It's just, I mean, they tried to redo it again 20 years later and failed big time.
Oh yeah.
Did you see the sequel from 2014?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I completely forgot that exists. Every time
I saw, it was one of those sequels that was so bad that I just was like, I walked out of the theater, I said, okay, float away. And I just like haven't really thought about it much since. And it's almost to the point now, 8 years on, that it's like it didn't happen.
Yeah, I would agree.
Because Dumb and Dumber from 94 is scene to scene hilarious. Like there's not a lull really at all. There's a scene in like where there's like maybe 3 or 4 scenes that don't include Carrie and Daniels that are like about the plot. Those are like the 4 minutes of the movie that are like, okay, we can fast forward, but otherwise. So I like that one. Probably my favorite comedy ever is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Do you like that one? Have you seen that one? With Steve Martin and John Candy. That movie's just great. It's a good Thanksgiving movie too.
Yeah. I haven't watched that one in a while. That's one I feel like I watched a ton on VHS. Somebody had that in my family, and we used to watch that one all the time.
It's not as consistently funny as Dumb and Dumber, but it's pretty great. And I love the story, and the banter between Steve Martin and John Candy is so fantastic. I wish they had made 5 more movies together, but at least we have that one. And then I love the work of Albert Brooks, like Defending Your Life and Lost in America, and some of his stuff. His Mother is so funny. And going back to the 70s, like 71, 72, it's not the best time for comedies, I would say. I feel like comedies kind of come into their own outside of some exceptions in the 80s and 90s. I'm trying to even think right now, like in the last year and a half, like, is there a comedy I have watched for this podcast that I really loved? Like, I'd have to think about it for a minute. Like like it's been mostly like dramas and thrillers and things that I've really taken to. But like 72 so far, the big ones have been Cabaret and The Godfather and Deliverance. Like I'm not like comedies aren't coming up that much.
When do you get into like the Mel Brooks era? When does his
Mel Brooks is 74. That's his big year. That's the year of Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein.
Okay, yeah.
He had a comedy in 1970 called, I think it's called The 12 Chairs, which is pretty good, but it came out right before I started the podcast, so we didn't do it.
Yeah.
And then The Producers was 68. So I'm not saying there aren't funny movies around this time. There's some great golden stuff here, but it's not like, it's kind of like the horror genre too. 71 and 72, not a great time for horror or comedy outside of a few exceptions.
Yeah.
But in terms of Monty Python, like what's been your relationship with Monty Python? Have you seen the other ones or just Holy Grail?
I've seen Holy Grail. What's the other one? There's more. Another one's kind of anthology-like.
Holy Grail is 75. I want to say Life of Brian is 79.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw Life of Brian once because I'm like, it's got my name in it. I got to watch this. Right. Very few films have my name in it. Do any movies have your name? Brandon.
Oh, no, but it is a popular catchphrase nowadays.
That's true.
On a lot of shirts and
that's true.
Stickers.
Your name is on a lot of bumper stickers, and your last name is Siri. So people are saying your name a lot.
Yeah, I get a lot of exposure for, hey, Siri, let's go, Brandon, you know?
Yeah. I'm just Life of Brian and Brian's Song, which we talked about a few months ago.
Oh, I activated my Siri on my phone.
Oh, your Siri just went off. That's perfect. Yep. Yeah, but our names aren't really in movies a lot. So I'm like, well, I should see this. I have no memory of Life of Brian. I saw it in like high school or college, so I'd have to watch that again. I know I've never seen Meaning of Life from 83. That's their last one.
That one. I've
seen that one.
Life. That's the one that's like a bunch of shorts because it jumps from that time period. And so like it jumps, generations. Again, same style, same group of actors. But yeah, that one. I've seen that one. I have not seen Life of Brian.
Okay. Meaning of Life is kind of more sketches. It's not like a through line story.
I don't remember it being a through line story. I thought it was it jumps around like, this different time periods in each like section.
Oh, okay. Cool. And I believe that's the last one. I mean, they worked together on other projects. It wasn't the last Monty Python movie, Meaning of Life. I feel like there was the Spam-A-Lot show was kind of a Monty Python project, right? But they never made that into a movie.
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't like the biggest fan of Monty Python. Even the Holy Grail when I was younger took me a lot of times. I'd watch it a couple times before I like got it. Like there's definitely like it took me the longest time to understand why the same people were doing multiple characters. I'm like, what is this? This doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you don't see that very often. I feel like you introduced Monty Python and the Holy Grail to me in high school. I feel like you showed it to me.
Probably.
And I was like, I wasn't really sure how to take it because it's not your typical kind of humor that we're used to back then.
Right. I mean, I think the reason I think my favorite style of comedy is like this style though, where the actors, when they're filming it, nothing that they're doing for the most part is funny. They're acting very serious, but what they're doing is funny. You know, that's why I've always liked shows like Arrested Development. Nothing that when they're actually acting it out, it's like they're making a soap opera. It's afterwards when you watch it that it's like the situation is funny. And that's like kind of like Monty Python style as opposed to like a 90s sitcom.
Right.
You know,
where they're trying to get laughs and you can see in the acting that they're trying to get laughs.
It's I like the style that they don't care whether or not you laugh. It's like it was funny to them, so they did it anyways.
It's why I love Leslie Nielsen so much because he's funny. He's funny because he plays it for real. You know, he walks in there, you know, Frank Drebin and Naked Gun. He walks in there with a serious face and his gun, and he's like, and he acts as if he's in a drama.
Yeah,
and that's why it's funny.
Yeah.
And if you look at Leslie Nielsen, like his first 20, 30 years of his career, he played only dramatic roles. And then someone had the brilliant idea to cast him in Airplane. Like, let's get this like serious dramatic actor in this crazy comedy and have him play it straight. And it's a brilliant idea.
Yeah. Well, if you can look at, I mean, in the British side of things, like Rowan Atkinson's early career,
right?
If you ever went back and watched like the Blackadder series,
no,
Laurie in it. Those are very funny again, but they're like this style where they're serious, but they're funny when you watch them. But it has a dark tone because Blackadder is the villain of each season.
Was that his breakthrough? Rowan Atkinson, was that Blackadder? I grew up with Mr. Bean.
I know.
Mr. Bean was my it was my 6th grade teacher, Ms. Moore. It was like one of her favorite things. Can't remember how she integrated it into the curriculum, but I remember watching a lot of Mr. Bean in 6th grade. I don't know if that was for a paper or what. Yeah. But Mr. Bean is so funny. I don't know about the movies. They've done 2 or 3 films. Yeah. I think I only saw the first one, but the sketch comedy show is really great. So I'm not against sketch comedy shows and movies, and I mean a movie like And Now for Something Completely Different is kind of hard to talk about because there's not really a story here to grab onto. There's not a performance we can talk about. It's a series of very short sketches, and it's like it literally just comes down to, did you laugh? That's it. I guess talk about like the style of humor and who these guys are. You know, a lot of these actors was kind of like their first movie. And then many of them, especially John Cleese, went on to have really phenomenal careers in film and TV and voice work and all sorts of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John's definitely the biggest. You know, you recognize the cast.
Eric Idle's pretty good. I like
it. In a bunch of stuff.
He's funny. I love Eric Idle. Like whenever he pops up in something, when he shows up in European Vacation.
Yeah.
When they just keep like they keep striking him with their car and he's like mangled up. He's like, no, I'm good. I'm okay. And you just see like bruises and blood everywhere. Like he's pretty great in European Vacation, a very underrated comedy, I would say.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Nobody watches the European one.
Yeah. That's like it's fun. That franchise is so funny because it's like, I feel like today it's all about Christmas Vacation. That's the one that's just the most well-known. Everyone watches every December. Mm-hmm. And then, more people watch the first one because that's like the original and it's got a great story and it's very funny. But then I feel like European and Vegas are kind of shunned. And
well, yeah, I think the original Vacation was tough because it was rated R.
Rated R's got nudity.
When I was a kid, that was not allowed to watch that one.
Yeah.
So that there's an entry level to that one. And then I think Vegas Vacation would still be funny, but it's not the Vegas we know anymore. Vegas is like totally different. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. That hasn't happened very often where you get a sequel that's PG-13 and we're allowed to watch it when we're young, and then the original is rated R. Like that's pretty unheard of. I guess Speed was one example. Speed was rated R and the sequel was PG-13.
Yeah.
But I don't think a lot of people were watching Speed 2 and wanting then to go see the original. But I remember I saw Christmas First and I was like, I wanted to watch the original, and I think it was my mom. She's like, no, that's rated R. You can't watch that yet.
Yeah.
So I had to wait like 6 months. And then my dad was like, okay.
The first one, it's only because there are 2 scenes. It's because the boobs, which they easily could have just taken
in the shower.
And then the scene where he just goes off swearing at the end.
In the car. Yeah.
Probably the funniest scene in the movie. So
I think you're all effed in the head, that scene.
Yeah.
Well, there's also that scene where they get naked in the pool, right? Yeah, I don't think you really see anything, but it's
like a quick flash.
It's very suggestive.
They could easily have taken that out and not had a problem.
Yeah. But that's again something I loved about comedy in the 80s. Like they weren't afraid to just make it R-rated for 2 or 3 scenes. I feel like nowadays, if there's an R-rated comedy from a studio that goes to theaters, they make that so R-rated scene to scene, you can't believe it.
Yeah.
But back in the 80s, you have the movie I mentioned before, Planes, Trains, Automobiles, which is the most ridiculous, like the craziest example of an R-rated comedy. A movie that I don't even know if it would get a PG-13. I think it would be PG. And there's one scene where Steve Martin just goes off, says the F word 15, 20 times, and it maybe a minute, maybe 90 seconds. And the rest of the movie is PG. I'm like, how did John Hughes, how was he able to pull that off? You think someone at the studio had been like, no, take that out, PG.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I didn't even see and now for something completely different, what it was rated. Was it? Did it get it? I mean, yeah. So it's 72. It was pretty tame, I would say, right?
It's PG.
Is it PG? Yeah. They were, we've talked about that on the podcast too. Like in the early 70s, you can put a lot in your movie and get a PG. We don't have a PG-13 yet.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like if you're on the cusp, if you're kind of in the middle, like we talked about Panic in Needle Park, I want to say was a movie that had like nudity in it, had swearing, had drugs, had like a montage of them snorting coke and stuff. PG. And I'm like, okay, so if I wanted to show, if a teacher wanted to show young students a movie and the rule was it had to be G or PG, I'm like, they could show the Panic in Needle Park. Would not be a good idea. But that rating has definitely changed a lot now. Yeah, I mean, do you think this and now for something completely different would have been funnier if they'd gone with a hard R, or do you think that would have not really worked with the style of humor?
I mean, back then, maybe. Nowadays, compared to the sketch comedy shows of like, I don't know, like Key and Peele or something like that, and they definitely weren't nearly as edgy as like some of the modern sketch shows we've seen, even in the 90s sketch shows with was it Kids in the Hall and
Kids in the Hall, which we got one movie, right? Brain Candy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great Siskel and Ebert chat about that. Siskel liked it and Ebert hated it. It's like a good 3 minutes. Check that out. It's fun. I love when they would disagree, especially about like a little nonsense movie like Brain Candy.
Yeah.
But so as we go on with our thoughts on this one, I have some trivia to share. So the original sketches were recreated for this film with an extremely low budget, often slightly rewritten and edited, financed by Playboy's UK executive, Victor Lowndes. It was intended to help Monty Python break into the US, as I said. The film was shot on location in England and inside an abandoned dairy farm during the final months of 1970. The budget was so low that some effects seen on the TV series could not be repeated for the movie.
Wow.
You don't hear about that ever. Usually when they make the movie, they have more money.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's so weird. It's kind of like they all sat together and they said, how can we break through outside of the UK? Let's just recreate these already written film sketches again. Like, has any other movie done this? Like, that's what my question watching this. I'm like, has any other movie just taken sketches from another thing and then just recreated it for the film? I feel like it's pretty rare.
Not in the same language. I could see them doing it like, changing languages or something like that, but yeah, just the same actors playing the same roles, just redoing it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess that's easier because you've done it once. And so it's kind of like, it's like an actor performing on a stage for 18 months and then they make it into a movie. And then sometimes they would actually include the same actors, like Fences, Denzel Washington and Viola Davis perform that on stage for months, and then they turn it into a movie. So it's kind of like, I understand, like, and then it's kind of a different, like, but it's still a way different medium to go from a stage to a cinema screen, like the camera. Whereas I feel like recreating the scenes for this movie was probably the same experience, or probably wasn't that much different outside of the audience being gone.
Well, yeah, why did they have to refilm it at all? Is it different camera type?
I'm assuming it was the quality of the film, right?
Yeah, it's hard to tell nowadays because when you watch it, you can't really
like I think
really tell.
So Flying Circus started airing in '69. I'm assuming the quality of the camera that they used with an audience, like a live show done, probably it wasn't up to standard of like a cinematic movie. Maybe that's what I'm thinking. I mean, this movie looks pretty good for being low budget, right? I thought it looked pretty good for a movie. It didn't feel like a TV show. And then they had all the animation. they had to pad that running time. Let's see. So the director, Ian McNaughton, would often go to the pub at lunchtime and come back slightly drunk, which would then require him to take a nap. As a director does, right? See, if that was the life of a director, I would have pushed harder for that line of work. Terry Jones and Terry Gilliam, who both harbored directorial ambitions, saw the opportunity as a way to learn some of the craft. So they would take in turns to call the shots while the director was having his nap. I mean, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. It's like if you're on a schedule, right?
Yeah. Well, especially Terry Gilliam. I mean, didn't he go on to direct
Terry Gilliam? Yeah. Not.
So,
I'm not sure. Like, I don't know if everyone knows that about Terry Gilliam. Was that he kind of got a start in Monty Python?
I didn't know that.
And then became a huge, film director. Another
like
genre.
double taking, like, oh wait, that's the same guy. What? I did not know.
Yeah,
that.
like he was like working on Holy Grail and working with Monty Python in the 70s, and then went on to be a major film director. Brazil, The Fisher King, 12 Monkeys. He worked with Heath Ledger and Matt Damon on The Brothers Grimm. He finally made that
Don Quixote.
He finally made Don Quixote after 20 years. Remember, he started. Did you watch that documentary about the making of the 2002 movie? Yeah.
I never saw the documentary.
It's a feature-length documentary all about just the disastrous production. Everything that could have gone wrong did.
There was like flash floods and like stuff.
Flash floods and horrible weather, and one of the actors got sick and couldn't go on the horse, and you just see lots of footage of Johnny Depp sitting there just like waiting. Like nothing's happening. And then he finally made it with Adam Driver.
That's right.
And I watched it. It was okay. It wasn't great. I felt like I owed it to Terry Gilliam to watch it. I'm like, well, the guy took forever to finally get his vision on screen. And Adam Driver's great. So that was cool.
I just want to see, because it was like superstitious that why nobody could ever get that film made. So I guess you could watch it just to get rid of the superstitions.
Yeah, I remember when they announced that it was going into production, and I was like, oh man, it's like, is he gonna get struck by lightning on day one?
Yeah.
And he actually, like, they made it and he finished it. And I was like, oh, okay, there you go. Adam Driver ticking off, every director who's ever lived. Adam Driver is trying to work with all of them by the time he turns 50. Have you seen that list of every director Adam Driver has worked with since like Spielberg in 2012 for Lincoln? Like it's in 10 years. It's like 20 major figures in like 10 years.
Wow. No.
Like everybody. It's like, who has he not worked with yet?
Yeah.
He probably sits with his agents like once a year. It's like, okay, next, Paul Thomas Anderson, make it happen.
We need Kevin Smith. We're going to need Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah. So let's see what else I have here. So when writer and actor Terry Gilliam asked British animation legend Bob Godfrey if he could use his camera to recreate his animated sequences for this movie, Godfrey didn't know who Gilliam was and told him to bugger off. Later, Godfrey found out that Gilliam was a member of the Monty Python team and then ultimately came on board, helped him complete some of the sequences for the movie. I feel like in 70, there wasn't a whole lot of people who knew who these guys were and didn't really quite know what to expect from them, right?
Yeah.
I feel like they needed one movie behind them or something to get, someone to come on board and do animation and things. Like, it's probably hard at the beginning. So the movie opened in America in August of 72. Reviews were mixed, but more positive than negative. Let's see. The film had little success at the box office, did not do well until it was re-released in 74, which was after PBS began showing original television episodes in the US. So I think PBS started airing Flying Circus, and then that got some more people interested, and then they re-released this movie, and then more people kind of took to it. It currently has a 90% rating on Rotten Tomatoes based on 21 reviews. That kind of surprises me for how quiet I was watching this for 90 minutes, that it has 90% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Where are these 20 people watching it? Like,
I mean, I was
on
like,
PBS still.
I put this on, like, I was in the mood for something funny and stupid. And I'm like, this is going to be great. Like, I was in the mood for it. And it just, every sketch, I'm like, no, that's not, no, maybe the next one. That was kind of my experience watching this. But although the film was initially unsuccessful at achieving an American breakthrough, it did very well financially in the UK. The Monty Python group, did not consider this film a success overall, but it does enjoy a major cult following today among Monty Python fans. So all of you Monty Python fans tuning into this episode, I wish I could tell you I had a great time, but I did not. How was your experience watching this, Brandon? We've talked about it a little bit, but
again, there was a couple of okay sketches, nothing amazing. There's a little bit of nostalgia in there for the ones I recognized, and a couple that I thought were like a little funny, like the old lady. They're dressed up as old ladies and they went around causing chaos on the street.
Yeah, that was amusing. I wrote down like 5 sketches I kind of like, 5 I didn't like so much, and I like them dressed as ladies. But even the way that is shot, that with the handheld. Oh yeah, like there was something about the look of the sketch that made it less funny than I think if it would have been like camera locked off on sticks and had a little bit more of a setup to the punchline. It was kind of like the camera's just like roaming with them as they walk down the sidewalk, and I'm like,
I think one of the things that's tricky is in a lot of their sketches, not just here but everywhere, because it's always the same group of actors.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they all kind of look the same. And you can tell, like, oh, John Cleese is the tallest guy, but they'll change costumes and you're like, wait, which one's which now? And it's like, do they even want us to know which one's which?
Yeah.
I feel like they intentionally are just like trying to have some ambiguity on like, hey, we're all like a troupe, like we're the actors, but we're not actors independently.
And then, and did you notice Eric Idle in that scene where they're dressed as the old women has like weird, like witch makeup on and looks like really bizarre. And you can barely even see him in the background. I'm like, what's going on there?
Yeah. It never makes, again, their hair changes all the time too. And it's like, that's just what you're doing today, huh? Okay.
It's tricky. I'm like, humor of a man dressing up as a woman is not my favorite, and never has been. So I'm watching this. I'm like, okay. But I mean, there is something kind of fun to see these guys dressing up as women. I did like that one shot where it's panning across beautiful women in bathing, 2-piece bathing suits. And then there's John Cleese, and now for something completely like that was good. I like that.
Yeah,
but that's like what, 45 seconds?
Yeah, I was like an interlude to the next thing,
And here was my issue with the animation was I thought it was kind of trippy and cool, and I love kind of crude, low budget animation of the late 60s and early 70s. I love the look of it, and We talked about Fritz the cat a few months ago, which was a conversation. But there's something about that crude look that I kind of like about animation. Everything's so clean now and perfect. And back then, you can tell it's like hand drawn, frame to frame, and they're just trying to get it on there. So I took to it, but I did find that the animation took away from any of the humor that the movie could have had. Because as soon as like maybe a sketch or two are pretty good and it starts to build and momentum, and then we have 3 minutes of animation that has nothing to do with what came before.
Right. I mean, the one was that one with it was like dancing. The teeth were the keyboard in his mouth.
Yeah,
and that was hard to watch. That was really hard. It just kind of kept going. Like, okay, his teeth are keys on a piano. Great. So like, how do you come up with that unless you're tripping balls? Like,
yeah. I mean, it has to be said, Brandon. I'm watching this. I'm like, I think there is an experience where this movie could be really great, and that would be in a very crowded theater on a Saturday night at midnight somewhere with some chemicals.
Yeah.
Like this is not a movie you watch by yourself in the middle of the day, just sober, just like to put it on. I'm like, this is not working.
Yeah.
I could see how this could be like a successful midnight movie, at least back, maybe not today, but like back in the day. Like I could see, teenagers and young adults like coming to a movie at midnight and seeing this and, hopped up on something and probably had a great time.
It was PBS After Hours. Their equivalent of Saturday Night Live, I guess.
Yeah, and that's mainly the animation aspect to it. If it was just sketch after sketch after sketch, I'd be like, oh, that's it is what it is. But like, I mean, it's at least 15 to 20 minutes of animation, and it's like a lot of weird, groovy, crazy stuff. And I'm like, I don't know who put this together, but something's going on.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, I did like when I wasn't laughing that much, I was like at least kind of paying attention to the animation, which I did think looked kind of cool. So I thought the most I laughed in the whole movie was the opening where they kept blowing the guys up. That was funny.
Yeah,
like the way it opens is great, and I wasn't laughing like hysterically, but I laughed like 3 or 4 times. I went, okay, this is good. This is gonna be pretty good. This is gonna be funny, and that was like the height of the humor for me in the whole movie.
Yeah, it opened up and it was like, what the opening marquee said, the end. And you're like,
oh, that's right. And then like soon after, like it shows the end. And do they start the credits rolling? Or I mean, it's almost like for about 10 seconds you think it's over. Kind of like what they did at the beginning of Man on the Moon with Jim Carrey. Remember that? Yeah. How it opens with the end credits?
Yeah.
Which is pretty good. But yeah, don't they cut to like a stock video, like footage of like a building being blown up or something? Like yeah. Clearly not shot for the movie. And that's when I was laughing at the hardest. I just thought that was good.
Yeah, it was like stuff that you could tell that they were just having fun on the editing floor. Like, just throw this in here, throw that in there. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And then like I liked the joke of the flasher with the boo sign. That was good.
Oh yeah.
What do we get? 3 or 4 women? I think it's all women, right? And he goes like this, and they go ah, and they run away, and I'm like, okay. And then he turns, and it's just he's clothed, and it just says a sign that says boo.
Yeah,
I thought that was funny.
That's good. It's a good, really short joke.
So yeah, I'm reaching here, Brandon. This is like I'm talking like 4 minutes of this movie.
I feel like that's all of it. I mean, again, there's a couple other ones that were like not memorable, where the promiscuous wife and the husband standing right there.
Yeah.
But that wasn't really that funny. It was just kind of like, well, this is stupid. You had the one where, what was the one where the guy, they were all prisoners or something, and they had to pick a fruit.
Uh-huh.
And then he ended up picking a banana, and he just kills the guy and eats the banana. I didn't understand what that one was about. That whole sketch, I was like, what are they doing?
There were at least 10 sketches where I'm like, what in the world could possibly be funny about this? Like, there's like, I'm just like trying to even forget me laughing at this sketch. Like, just I'm trying to understand what am I supposed to be even laughing at here?
Yeah.
Like I was thinking that in some of the sketches, like there's like nothing. I want to laugh movie, and there's nothing here that I think that it's not that I don't think it's funny or another person would find it funny. I'm like, I don't even understand what the joke is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 that were just like that, where
there's a scene that stood out to me, and that Michael Palin walks up to, like, was a security officer, played by John Cleese, and Michael Palin's like, you want to come back to my room?
Oh
John
yeah.
Cleese says, yeah. And then they walk off, screen, and that's the end of the sketch. And I'm like, okay. So signifying that they're going back home to have sex. And I'm like, but like, that's the joke.
What's funny, yeah. Maybe was that humor 50 years ago? Like, there you go, I guess.
I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's 1970. They're making this. I'm like, yeah, I guess that was funny. But
yeah,
it's just very dry, very dry. I thought like the ending sketch didn't work. The upper class twit of the year, I think that was the longest sketch. Maybe I feel like that was like 5 minutes or more, and I didn't find that funny at all. And I'm like, this is the closing sketch of the movie.
Yeah.
Imagine making a 90-minute movie, Brandon, and you just the last 10 minutes you say, I'm gonna make this as unfunny as possible.
Yeah, it's definitely what they did with the last one.
Which one? Which one?
The last one, the twit of the year.
Oh yeah, of this movie.
Yeah. No,
but I mean, who? I think it was Tom Shadyac, the director of Ace Ventura: Pet Detective and Liar Liar, who said, you can make a comedy that's got some lulls in the middle, but if you wow them in the end, if you end with like a great joke, a very funny final few minutes, like that sometimes is what like can make or break a movie's success, is like the last few minutes of the movie. And I feel like in a sketch comedy movie of 90 minutes, you need to deliver on that last one. Yeah. In this movie, like we mentioned before, I'm not doing an episode about it, but Everything You Always Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask by Woody Allen, which came out in August of 1972, 50 years ago, which is also a comedy sketch movie. I believe it has 7 sketches total, maybe 8, much longer stories, some that go on to like 15, 20 minutes. But that movie for me is kind of hit and miss. I really love the Gene Wilder falling in love with a sheep story.
Yeah.
That one's pretty good. But the last 10 minutes where it's like Inside Out, but R-rated live action, is brilliant, phenomenal, hilarious. Every moment, every joke lands. It's so creative. And there's nothing like that here in this movie.
No, it's like when you watch a Saturday Night Live sketch or something, they don't know how to end the sketch, so it just kind of like ends. The whole movie just kind of does that. We're like, oh yeah, it's the end now, guys.
And that segment in Allen's film also has a gay joke, but I feel like it's funnier when Woody Allen is dressed up as the sperm ready to jump in, and he looks at the camera with his glasses on. He says, oh my God, what if it's a homosexual encounter? Like that gay joke, I thought worked better in that movie. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm just kind of like scratching for things to say. I mean, like if there's one takeaway from this, is that even though I wasn't really laughing out loud that much, there is a comic sensibility to these actors that I really could see in this early work, that you can tell, like, you know, that the more they work on their material, they get like a story, like that they could produce some great stuff, which they would go on to do, not just Holy Grail, but some other movies they did down the road, one of which I'll talk about in our segment at the end, which I adore. So they're like, even though this one doesn't really work for me, I can see that there's definitely something there that could turn into much better work down the road.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, all the actors are they're all great actors. The troupe is good. They're funny. It's just this style is it's hard to watch as a movie because it's not a movie. It's a TV show remade.
Yeah, it is like I don't know. I'm like, okay, if I could go back and talk to these guys in early 70, like if I suggested, hey, you guys should make this into a streamlined 90-minute narrative with one story, like I don't know if that would have been better than what they produced here. I don't know like what they would have come up with, because they were known for doing these short sketch comedies, these sketches for their show. I don't know if they had the means in 1970 to make like just a like one story 90-minute movie.
Yeah,
I think they needed to make this to just get it out of their system so that they could do other stories that they wanted to down the road with more money, because it looks like they didn't have much of a budget for this one.
No, I would imagine all the budget just went into whatever upping the production costs were, but no, I can't imagine the actors got paid any more than they did for the normal series.
Right. And the director, he's out at the pub every day. He comes back. He's kind of drunk, so he's taking naps until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it would have taken a while. They had just made this into like a regular style kind of comedy movie with one story.
Yeah.
I forgot to look. I don't think that director carried on, right, for other productions. I guess I could look real quick. What's his name? Ian McNaughton. Oh, it says on Wikipedia that Terry Gilliam was the director of the animated sequences. So that's interesting.
There you go.
So let's see. Ian McNaughton. He was director of lots of things. Partial filmography. Oh, it looks like he was an actor as well. He acted in a 1956 film called X, The Unknown. He was also nominated for 4 BAFTA awards, all for Monty Python's Flying Circus. That's kind of cool. And then it looks like he got 1 Primetime Emmy nomination for the Monty Python show in 1975. So they were still creating TV into the mid 70s. That's interesting. I was under the assumption that after this movie came out, they were putting all their eggs into the feature film basket, but it looks like that wasn't the case. It looks like they were still producing their show well into the 70s.
Yeah, it looks like Flying Circus went until 74.
Okay. So yeah, so I pulled up his IMDb here. So the director after and now for something completely different, it looks like it's almost all TV. And then TV series, 1 TV movie. And yeah, he never did really a theatrical feature film. This would be like the only one. That's interesting. I think maybe he liked taking his time and like not having all that pressure to produce something that would go to theaters. I don't know. Yeah. So as we kind of wrap up our thoughts on this movie, anything else you'd like to say? I ask it almost every guest. I ask, like, how would this movie be made today? I don't think you could make this today. I don't know if a modern day audience, I mean, unless it was like some like superstar comedy star who just decided to emulate Monty Python or something like that. I don't think an audience today would sit still for a 90-minute movie where it was just one sketch after another without any through line. I don't think they would sit for it. Do you?
No way. I mean, they tried it with, what was that movie? Was it movie 42 or something?
Movie 43 from 2013. Which, we got to mention that one.
That was all big actors in sketches, and that bombed.
So that was the Farrelly brothers, right? I believe they shot that segment with Kate Winslet and Hugh Jackman. Have you seen that segment where they go on a date, their first date, and he's got testicles dangling from his neck?
Oh, right? Yeah.
And this strikes Kate Winslet as horrifying. And that's the joke. They made that segment, and then getting those 2 actors on board, then that brought on all those other people to do other sketches. And yeah, the most recent big budget theatrical movie that we've had in the last decade to 2 decades that is somewhat like the movie we just talked about is movie 43, which I believe was maybe the biggest bomb of the whole year.
Yeah,
nobody saw it.
Yeah, nobody saw it.
I rented it because I'm a Kate Winslet super fan completist. I'd always wanted to see that segment. I saw it in the trailer, and I'm like, oh, that looks kind of interesting. And then I remember, I don't know if I even made it to the end. I think I did, but I was like, at the halfway point, I'm like, this is really bad. Yeah, I think it had like 2 more segments that were okay. I think there was one with Chloe Grace Moretz that was kind of funny, but otherwise it was kind of a dead zone.
Yeah, I don't remember if I even saw it.
Wasn't on the top of your list.
On my radar. I mean, I remember it, but I don't remember ever seeing it. If I saw it, it definitely wasn't in theaters.
Well, and I remember it went to theaters. I want to say it was January of 2013. Like it played in theaters.
Yeah.
Just a few months after the Oogie Loves and the Big Balloon Adventure played to empty movie houses all around the world, we got movie 43.
Yeah, it was a great time for film.
The Oogie Loves and the Big Balloon Adventure movie I worked on for 4 months. in
Okay.
2009.
We still
My
watch
it's my contribution to cinema is the Oogie Loves.
Where can we watch that today?
I don't know. Is it streaming?
I don't know. I want to show it to my kids and I'll give you a full honest review.
It was made for kids. So yeah, I would love for you to sit your children down one day or just be like, okay, so a friend of mine worked on this movie and let's take a look. The Oogie Loves. But yeah, so I don't think you could really, most films we talk about for this podcast, you could talk about, well, this is how they would remake it today. This is what they would do different. I don't even know how. I mean, it's not like you can do the same material with different actors. I mean, you could, but it's like, what would be the point?
No, I mean, you could remake it for a streaming service. They've done plenty of sketch comedy on those, but
Yeah.
bringing it back as a movie
Mhm.
with a wide release and everything, like, no way. Impossible.
Brandon, get ready. The Oogie Loves and the Big Balloon Adventure is free to stream on Tubi, Tubi.
All right. Well, I'll have to get
You
Tubi.
have got, that would be, I would love to hear back on what especially your little one, like how she responds to it.
Yeah, she's 3. That's about the right age, right?
Yeah, it was made for like 2 to 4 year olds.
Okay, yeah.
The producer at the time, I remember, like I met him, like we were in meetings, and he's like, nobody has made a theatrical feature film interactive for like the 2 to 4 year old set. It's like never been done. And I'm like, oh, well, maybe there's a reason for that, but maybe there's something there. You never know. When someone does something totally different, you're like, well, maybe it could work. And this one didn't. Because you had to get the parents to bring the kid.
They should have had that producer take a 2 or 3 year old to see any movie before making a movie for a 2 to 3 year old. Because I can tell you, when I go with my youngest, we're going to the bathroom at least 2 to 3 times in the middle of the movie. She's going to be standing up, like, so we have to sit in like the front row where the rail is.
Yeah,
she's going to be standing up for at least 60% of the movie because she's got to be swinging on the bar and doing, and we always go on like a Tuesday on the second week of release, because that's how much fun it is to take a 2 to 3 year old to a movie. Like, it can't be for anything you actually want to see, because you're not going to be watching the movie very much.
I mean, the problem with Oogie Loves really is that they didn't bother to create an interesting story, or, I mean, it was just about that interactive element that they thought, oh, this might pull in the audiences and bring in the little kids. And like, because the movie tells you every few minutes to get up and dance,
Oh yeah.
So I have many pictures from experience. I took my friend Shanta in 2012. It was here in Reno. It played at the Park Lane, and we went to an afternoon screening. It was me and her daughter and her daughter's friend, 4 of us, and we were the only 4 people in the movie. It was just the 4 of us.
Wow.
And I told her, I said, I am actually going, whenever it has that call on the screen that you have to get up and shake it, I'm doing it. And thankfully, no one else was in the theater, so I didn't have to feel embarrassed. So the 7 or 8 times, I'm getting up, and it was a pretty surreal hour and a half. Wow, to see a movie that I worked on in the spring of 2009. We worked on it every day for like 4 months, trying to get the right cast in it for the dancers first, and then we got the big names like Cloris Leachman and Christopher Lloyd. I still remember we went out to Jim Carrey, and my boss had a conversation with his agent about it. Jim Carrey circa 2009 was his name was in the mix. But and then to have come home and I'm kind of a different life, and then I go to an empty screening of that movie 3.5 years later. That was pretty surreal. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, I feel like if you're a Monty Python super fan, you've probably already seen this. You probably love it or like it, and that's great. I feel like if you're kind of like us, like we're not as familiar with the Monty Python franchise. I've never seen the show. I really, when I think them, I think Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Like, I feel like for more casual moviegoers, like that's the one everyone knows, and that is a great movie, very, very funny movie. I feel like I feel like the average person might be disappointed putting this on, expecting a movie like Holy Grail, right?
Oh yeah, I mean this is for it's for fans of the Flying Circus, but they might have already seen it, so it
Right.
also might not be.
Oh, that would be weird too. We haven't even talked about that. Like, what if you've seen the show in full and then you put this movie on? That'd be a weird experience.
Yeah,
you're just watching the same stuff shot differently.
You're like, why would it might not be as funny the second time? That's kind of the point of the humor. Is it's surprising.
Yeah. But I guess if you're like a completist, if this is the one of the 4 movies you never got to, like maybe you'll get something out of it more than I did, but not one of my favorite films I've looked at for this podcast, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that takes us to the final 2 segments. The first one's the Divine Double Feature. What would you pair this with? That was kind of hard for me to, like, I don't know. Like, you could just pick something just funnier.
Yeah.
Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah, right.
Here's something to make you laugh.
Pair with a better with another show, it's almost
right, like an Arrested Development or something.
I'm trying to think of what's a movie that has like an ensemble cast of like they're a band, they stick together. I asked a couple of people here like, oh, like Grown Ups, but I mean, like I'm not a huge fan of Grown Ups, but I'm like, I get it though. It's that group has made a lot of stuff together, or like maybe like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the show, like that cast is always like they've been around for so long that they're like you expect them to be together.
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying to find like a film like that where it's always the same people. So I don't know, maybe Adam Sandler. I'll pick something Adam Sandler family, just because he always has that same cast,
Oh, okay, like a more recent Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah, well, I was trying to find something that was like related. It has to have Chris Rock and Adam Sandler and David Spade. That core group of guys. Like maybe watch something with them to be contemporary. It's
not Uncut Gems.
No.
that'd be an interesting double feature. Yeah, so I went online and I just searched like comedy anthology films. I'm like, outside of Movie 43, have we gotten one in the last 20 years? And there is one that I saw once and I remember I liked it. I haven't thought about it since. But I'm like, well, I would pair it with a more modern film of like that similar thinking of multiple stories. Do you ever see The 10 by David Wayne, the guy who made Wet Hot American Summer? It's an anthology film of 10 stories. It's obviously much longer than we get like sketch-wise in this. But it's 10 comedic stories, each inspired by one of the 10 commandments. And it's got a great cast. It's got Paul Rudd, Winona Ryder, Jessica Alba, John Hamm, Adam Brody, lots and lots and lots and lots of people in it. And I remember I rented it once and I laughed a lot. I don't remember it that much. I saw it in like 07, 08. But David Wayne is a really, really funny director. I would also recommend as a good pairing to this would be Wet Hot American Summer from 2001. That's a great comedy too. So I could even recommend that one. But he did make kind of like an anthology comedy film in 07 called The 10. And it's got a good cast in it, kind of came and went. So that might be one to check out if you wanted to see like what's a more modern version of this. I'm pretty sure that The 10 is a much better movie than Movie 43. So if you wanted to watch a more modern comedy anthology film, I'd say The 10 is probably your best bet.
Yeah.
Check it out. He also directed Role Models and Wanderlust. Role Models is really funny.
Oh, yeah,
Did you see Role Models? That one was good too. So yeah, not a great comedy, but I remember it being pretty amusing and it had a really good cast. So check that out. Our final segment, I thought we'd talk about John Cleese today on Beyond the Flick. If you can only take 3 of his movies to a desert island, what would be the 3? Kind of hard because he's in most movies, he's just in a little part of it. So it's not like he really headlines much.
Well, and he's done a lot of voiceover work over the years, so I'm not going to count any of that. I'm not going to count. I mean, he was great in it, but Clifford, like he was just in Clifford.
Clifford, the big red dog. Who does he play in that?
He's the guy that sells the girl the dog.
Oh, okay.
He has like a magic pet store. But
you watch that with your kids or just by yourself?
Oh, we watched that one together.
Did your kids know? Like, did they say something about John Cleese's voice?
No.
That guy's funny, Dad. Can we put on? Is he in anything like his real self?
Yeah, right. I think
Yeah,
we were talking
the last
before.
10 years. Oh, real quick.
Yeah.
The last 10 years, it's almost all voiceover.
Yeah. He was in like Shrek movies, and he was
Shrek,
Winnie the Pooh
Winnie the.
narrations. A lot of cartoons for kids.
Yeah, I don't like past like the early aughts. There's not much in terms of him like being in the movie.
No,
physically.
no, and I don't know what he's really been up to. I mean, he's probably half retired. I'm imagining that's why the voice work's probably an easy gig. But his IMDb page still has a ton of work listed on it of stuff that's in production
like, that hasn't come out.
Yeah, so I mean, he's busy.
Sorry, I interrupted. What were you going to say before?
I was just saying, I was going to answer your original question of what are we keeping? And, I think.
Oh yeah, what are we keeping?
Keep one of the Monty Pythons. Keep the Holy
Grail. Yep, that's on my list.
You and me were talking before we started that like when we were in high school, he was on screen a lot.
Yep,
because he was a side character in Harry Potter. He was the ghost, nearly headless Nick. He was in Rat Race around 2000.
2001.
What was the other one he was in? He was in.
So our period of like seeing movies together from 8th grade to 12th grade, we've got stuff from him like all the time, starting with the much maligned, but I kind of like it, the Out of Towners from early 99. We started seeing movies together in January of 99. Did we see Out of Towners together? I think we did.
Yeah, we did.
In March.
Yeah.
And he dresses up in women's clothes in that movie too, just like he does in and then now for something completely different. He's kind of like the weak link in that movie in some ways. Like I feel like this, like just the relationship story between Goldie Hawn and Steve Martin is kind of what makes that movie interesting. It's not so much John Cleese's role, but I guess he does, he's got a good moment at the very end when they're like watching the son perform, right? And he's like clapping in the audience and he's dressed up. He's got all the women's clothes on.
Yeah.
So I don't know. He was kind of amusing in that. And then we get him in The World Is Not Enough in the fall of 99.
Oh, yeah. He was R.
That was such a weird situation in that they, after how many decades, 3.5 decades, they're finally like introducing the next Q, because Desmond Llewellyn at that point was in his 80s, and they were like, well, he's not going to do it forever. So let's have John Cleese be the next one. And then Desmond Llewellyn's final moment in World Is Not Enough feels like a goodbye. Like he says something to James Bond, and then they have a shot of him just like leaving, almost like the sun setting. And then we cut away and we never see him again for the rest of the movie. It felt like a goodbye. And then right around the time of that movie's release, Desmond Llewellyn got in a car crash and died.
Yeah.
And then so it was almost like they knew that was going to be his last film, but he wasn't sick. Like he got in a tragic car accident and he died. And then so it kind of set up the next one, the last one with Pierce Brosnan, Die Another Day in 2002. It set up this character of R, or whatever you want to call him, and John Cleese was now Q in Die Another Day in 2002.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then that was it. And then we moved on to Daniel Craig after that. But so he did get his appearance in the James Bond franchise for 2 movies, so that was cool. And then he's in Harry Potter. Is he on IMDb? It says Chamber of Secrets. I'm like, when is he in the second one? I don't even remember.
Oh,
I remember his appearance in the first one. We get like a scene. Like, don't we like float through his body in Chamber of Secrets? Like, I feel like there's a darker scene where we see him like he's been like I don't know I forget what the word is called, but he's like immobile and the camera like floats through his body or something. Something's happened.
Remember the giant snake that was escaping and paralyzing the kids, like also paralyzed.
Like stunned is the word.
Stuns the ghost.
Yeah.
So he was a victim of the.
I feel like does he say a line of dialogue in Chamber of Secrets? I don't think he does.
He might not.
I think we just see his ghost for like one scene, and he's like stunned. Good day's work on you, John Cleese.
Yeah.
Right. All right. What's my work today? Okay, you just have to stand there.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a lot of people felt like Harry Potter, the first movie, and Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone was way too like like by the book. Like it was like chapter to chapter of the book translated to film. And that's something they moved away from as the movies went darker and the books got longer. They had to cut stuff. But a big criticism of the first movie is that it's very much almost scene by scene of the book. And I think like the scene everyone pointed to was Nearly Headless Nick in the movie. Serves no purpose, really, narratively. Right. It's like,
no,
like the scene's over and then he pops up and tells his story for a minute. And it's like, and then we like never see him again. I think we see him one more time later.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's just there because it's in the book.
Yeah. That's it. Now you're getting it.
It's amusing. But like if there was one scene in the whole 8 movie franchise that could be cut, it's probably the scene with Nearly Headless Nick. Yeah. But that's okay. But and then lastly, we can't not mention his appearance in Charlie's Angels Full Throttle from 2003. Remember that? Yeah. Isn't he like Lucy Liu's father? If I remember right. And there's a scene in the movie where we have John Cleese, Lucy Liu, and Matt LeBlanc together for a scene. And I'm like, who would have ever thought these 3 actors would share the screen in a movie? Did you see the second one, Full Throttle?
I think I saw it at least in theaters, once.
Yeah. The summer of sequels. Remember the summer of 2003? It was sequel after sequel, like every week.
Yeah.
Couldn't stop.
No, I remember that one was not as good as the original.
Yeah, I mean it had a lot of action. It was entertaining, but it was bonkers insane. Like the first movie from 2000 was crazy, but had a little bit more of a story. You kind of give it like the Full Throttle was like they just threw the script out and they just went completely berserk.
Yeah, it's like a music video. It's like one long music video of intensity.
Yeah. Did you hear Cameron Diaz is apparently making a movie with Jamie Foxx for Netflix? Like she retired in 2014.
Wow.
She's coming back. And my tweet about it was like, I like the first half of the sentence, which was that she's coming out of retirement for a movie. The second half of the sentence where it said a Jamie Foxx action comedy for Netflix. That was that was the part I wasn't so hot.
Yeah.
Because Netflix movies,
they're man.
I mean, has there been a really good like big budget action film or comedy film that went straight to Netflix that was really great? Like they've made some good dramas, like some end of the year awards buzzy dramas have been good.
Yeah.
But like some of the middle of the year stuff.
Yeah. No, I've been working my way through the Man from Toronto this last week, and I'm still not done with it.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that. So we're recording this in kind of later in July, and what is it called? The Gray Man is about to drop in a day or two.
Yeah.
And there's so much talk about how it's not good. And I'm like,
really?
Oh yeah. It's a $200 million movie. It's got Ryan Gosling and Chris Evans and a big cast and
Russo brothers
directed. And everything I'm reading is like, oh yeah, it's not good. So it's hard when it's on Netflix. I'll probably watch it with those names in it. It's the Russo brothers of Avengers. So I'm like, well, it's easy to watch. So I'm like, well, probably take a look, but
yeah,
we're not quite there yet. If they brought Monty Python back, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't think all these guys are around anymore. I want to say at least one or two of those guys is gone now.
Passed away.
Cleese is still here, but he's very old.
He did an interview with the Babylon Bee this last week.
Okay.
He's promoting something. I don't know what.
But so my final trio would be Monty Python and the Holy Grail. Of those films that we watched in high school, I think the best one is Rat Race. Like of the comedies with him that we saw around that time. Did you like Rat Race?
Oh yeah, no, that was a good one.
That'd be a good Divine double feature idea too, because they both have John Cleese and they're both these huge ensemble casts.
And they are kind of anthology-esque because like that movie,
bounces around.
It bounces around to like 5 different stories that are not really connected except for the beginning and end.
It's got Rowan Atkinson.
Yeah.
Yep.
There you go.
I believe still to this day, the final theatrical film by Jerry Zucker, who worked on the Airplane and Naked Gun movies and directed Ghost and directed First Night. I interned for his company for a semester in 2006, and he was developing many, many projects. I remember I sat in on a couple meetings, and That was in early 06. It's now 2022. Still have not seen another film of it.
Wow.
Sometimes it just takes a while.
Yeah.
He's like Terrence Malick. He's just taking his time. Terrence Malick, Days of Heaven, 1978. And then he comes back in 1998 with The Thin Red Line. Our first movie we saw together in a theater. All circular. So I'd say Monty Python, Holy Grail, Rat Race, and the best film he's in, I've seen it 3 or 4 times. I love it. And that's A Fish Called Wanda from 1988. Have you seen that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's a great story. Very funny. I love having, a very talented comedic woman in the midst of the story. It's not just a bunch of guys. I really love what Jamie Lee Curtis does in that movie. She's very funny and very sexy, and she really showed with that movie that how funny she could be. And and Kevin Kline, who's fantastic in that movie, won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor of the Year.
Yep.
Which is very hard to do for a comedy, but he pulled it off.
You used to have that poster up in your house.
I used to have the poster of Fierce Creatures from 97.
Oh, dang it.
The movie no one talks about that reunited the same 4 actors for a different story, different characters. That was, I guess, a very troubled production. They completely reshot either the last scene or the last act or something. Like they completely reshot it after a bad test screening or something. And I believe that movie came out in like early January of 97. Like they just dropped it. They were like, we're done.
Wow.
And it's got a lot of like sexual innuendo. It's not a terrible movie, but I saw it once and it was like, it's not A Fish Called Wanda.
Yeah.
But I did like that idea. I like the idea of like, you make a successful film. Instead of doing a sequel, you make a movie with the same actors and tell a different story, like with similar kind of humor, like in the same kind of tone and vein, but it's a different story. I'm like, that's kind of clever. They've done it before. They like we see actors reunite for things, but to get like the 4, like when it's like not just 2, it's like 4, like the 4 main people, they bring them back for a similarly kind of themed comedy, but with a different story, different characters. Like that's something I would like to see more of. I think it could be handled well, just it wasn't handled very well in that one.
Right.
But that's okay. The movie we all remember and love is A Fish Called Wanda. Very, very, very funny. I want to say, was it on the Criterion Channel or something? It was streaming in the last 3 years or 4 years, and I watched it again and I just laughed throughout the whole thing. It's very, very funny. Very good.
Yeah.
So if you've never seen that one, that would be my choice for a John Cleese movie night. All right. So that takes us to the end here. Brandon, anything you'd like to promote or tell our listeners where they can find you online?
No, I'm pretty this guy, just a man. I watch a lot of movies, watch a lot of TV, but yeah.
Well, we've known each other for many years. Always fun to have you on, and let's see some more movies down the road. Lots of good stuff coming up.
Sounds good.
All right, so that takes us to the end here. Thanks so much for being here, Brandon. Thanks to all of you for listening. You can find us online at filmat50.com or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Check out my YouTube channel, Brian Rowe Video. And until next time, remember, 50 never looked this good.